Ñam, 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 ñam. Sí, thank you. Gracias. Gracias. Muchísimas gracias. Welcome back to Living in Mexico. I'm Ana Maria Salazar. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Remember, you can follow us on my X account at AM Salazar, which I basically send out a lot of information about what's happening in Mexico, both in English and in Spanish. But this show does have its own account, which is at Mexico Daily, and there I post well, the link so you can watch these shows, especially if you can watch this show any part of the world. So follow me at Mexico Daily or at AM Salazar. Let's just grab some air. Let's just try to calm down. I'm sure many people started taking different types of stress drugs or doing exercise to reduce stress or try to sleep. I mean, it's been an incredible week. And not only for Mexico, that a lot of things happened in this country this week, but also in the United States, the decisions by Donald Trump have had an enormous impact on all of us, and of course, it's kept everybody on edge. So I am so thrilled that today's guest decided to join us this morning. He is a very well-known economist. He's been joining us throughout the years. Gabriel Casillas, he's the chief economist at Barclays for Latin America. Oh my God, you're joining us from New York. Was the tension as high in New York as it was here in Mexico City and in Washington? Gabriel, welcome to the show. Just give us a sense where we are right now.
Thank you very much, and always very nice to be in your show, Ana Maria. So, yeah, we need to catch the breath, as you
Yeah.
say, and a deep one, because yeah, it has been a heck of a week. We saw stock market down like more than 7%, then up the next day 10%, then down again. So it's been quite a roller coaster. Actually, volatility has been even worse than the episodes in COVID and 2008, 2009 in terms of volatility, not in terms of the decline, fortunately. And of course we have seen this not only in the stock market but also in the bond market, in currencies, in credit market. I mean, all markets have suffered substantially with these decisions because at the end is okay. I think if I can tell you this story at the beginning of the week, we were more, well, what's going to happen? It's Trump really, does he really want to reduce the current account deficit by country, or this is part of the art of the deal where
Is it a negotiation tactic?
Exactly, open up a lot of fronts, send very unfavorable terms to the counterparties, and see who's back on the negotiating table. We didn't know which one of those were, no, but unfortunately all these uncertainties taking a toll on the economy, and then not only in the US but the global economy is freezing some supply chains, because if you're going to make the international trade more expensive, in the meantime, you want to freeze things,
Right.
or you want to go ahead and buy things like people now buying more iPhones right now because maybe it's going to cost like double in the next few months and things like that. But well, anyway, so I want to tell you at the beginning of the year, it was that. Then with when Donald Trump decided to announce this 90-day delay in the tariffs except China, that brought a very important relief to markets. We saw, as I said, stock markets up by 10%. But then I think people realized that, then China retaliated again, and then the US retaliated of the retaliation, and then China retaliated of the retaliation. So at the end, people is realizing that, at the end, the thing with China is big, and that, maybe we're not going to be able to skip a recession after all. No? I think that's the deal right now. And unfortunately, since the US economy is doing so well so far, decelerating both well, then if you increase prices, it's easy for shops and producers to transfer these higher prices to consumers, and then fall into a recession. So you could have inflation first. So the Fed is not going to be able to cut rates as fast as in other recessions.
Although
So these are the
Trump
things.
has insinuated, he hasn't insinuated, he's told Powell that he needs to reduce the interest rates, and it doesn't seem that that's going to happen. Powell, he's the federal part of, he heads the federal bank in the United States, the Feds. But it doesn't seem that there's any indication that there's going to be that's going to happen, right?
Right. More so, the past meeting minutes
That's
came
right.
during the week. Nobody paid attention to them, because everybody was paying attention to Trump. But some point say, the minutes, the FOMC minutes are out. So, people read them and I said, no indication that they're close to cutting rates anytime soon.
So let me ask you this. I mean, of course, we've been watching this very, very closely from Mexico and watching how, what's happening with is the Mexican peso going to devaluate more? What's going to happen with the Mexican stock markets? Is the United States heading to a recession? Because if the United States, even if the United States has a slowdown, that has an enormous impact on Mexico. How is this going to affect the negotiations between Mexico and the United States for this trade agreement, the USMCA, that is also, in play right now? I mean, I'm asking you all these questions because, from Mexico, we've been following just these statements and Donald Trump's messages via Truth Social and X. And the question is, what should we expect from Mexico?
Yeah. Well, first of all, yeah, we have seen the currency, the Mexican peso reacting, but it has reacted very mildly. I mean,
Right.
in previous episodes like this, we could have seen the peso trading at 24, 25, and it has
Hmm.
gone to 21 at most and then come back. So definitely the thing that Mexico was exempted from the reciprocal tariffs.
Hmm.
I think that was a major thing. On top that, some of the other tariffs were actually paused, because right now, I mean, where we are, because we have seen announcements, we have seen delays, then we have seen implementation of some tariffs and pausing of some tariffs. So there are four tariffs, just going real quick with Mexico, no? And this is important to see how we're going to deal with it. So first one, you have the reciprocal tariffs that
Hmm.
all countries, 180 something countries got, except Mexico and Canada. So Mexico is good there.
It's exempt
So
from that, yeah.
exactly,
Hmm.
no reciprocal tariffs. Then number two, you have the sectoral tariffs on steel and aluminum for all the world. That's a 25% tariff, and that we are liable to that, Mexico as well as every other country in the world. Then you have three, the fentanyl tariffs. That's a 25% on all Mexican imports. That's on pause until May 2nd, where there will be a reassessment that I'll go into that right away.
Hmm.
And number four, we have the autos and auto parts tariffs. That has been very confusing because, a lot of people that I've talked to, they don't know that they're in effect or not. And
Hmm.
actually they are.
Yeah.
So there's a
Yeah.
25% on finished autos in Mexico that if your cars are USMCA compliant,
Hmm.
no, in the past they used to pay zero tariff. Now they're going to pay 25%, and they're going to be able to deduct the content of the US content. That it seems that it's about 40%. So at
Hmm.
the end, they're going to end up paying 15%. Now, what's the share of the USMCA compliant autos? It's about 85%. No, so
Hmm.
just to give you some ballpark
Hmm.
figures here. So it's not a big deal, but still, it's paying tariffs where vis-a-vis paying no tariff. And then
Hmm.
on auto parts, these 25% tariff, it's on pause as well until May 2nd. So these are the tariffs that are in place. But of course, for all the countries in the world, there are higher tariffs. So on a relative basis, Mexico is better, and markets reflect that. And actually,
Hmm.
on the stock market that you ask, one thing that happened is since the Mexican and the US election, the Mexican stock market was doing terribly. You know,
Hmm.
stocks that were like trading at 70 and people were thinking, oh, this is too cheap. Now are trading at 20,
Hmm.
no? Pesos. So, and companies have been doing really well. So
Hmm.
it seems that definitely because of valuations, the Mexican stock market has not done so badly during this market route. And actually, a lot of investors are thinking of when is the right time to go into Mexico, because at the end, it will benefit from, in the long run, from these, from all these, trade wars with China.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, in the short run, as maybe this makes us fall into a recession. I mean, the U.S. and Mexico as well, no?
Yeah.
And I can go with the last question you asked about what we're going to do with the treaty or with the USMCA. I mean, here Trump has been very vocal. No, he wants an earlier revision of the USMCA,
Right.
so because it was supposed to happen in 26, he wants it right now, and he wants two things: one chapter on national security. He doesn't want to be at the expense whether a president is cooperative or not. I mean, Sheinbaum has been very cooperative, and that's good. But former President Lopez Obrador was not cooperative. Peña Nieto was not cooperative. Calderon was. So that's one. And the second one is to enforce the rules of content of origin. And that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because you can put 1,000% of tariff on China, and then they can send the goods somewhere else, like Vietnam or Mexico. They can put made in Mexico, made in Vietnam, and send it to the US paying no tariff or paying a very low one. So definitely you have to do that to close that very big loophole. No?
So let me ask you this. I mean, there has been different, there's been different comments or analysis regarding what the decision made by the Mexican government in regards to all these, the barrage of attacks or the barrage of decisions, we'll call it decisions, by President Donald Trump. And, people have been questioning, has the President, Claudia Sheinbaum, has she made the right decisions? I think at least not negotiating in public the way other governments have, like the Canadian government, going back and forth publicly with Donald Trump. I'm not too sure that's the best negotiation strategy. I mean, I think each country has its own political internal situations that forces the governments to have different styles of negotiation with Donald Trump. But I think President Claudia Sheinbaum has actually done, I think she's done a good job considering the situation. I don't know, what's your analysis of what the decisions made by President Claudia Sheinbaum?
No, I think President Sheinbaum has done a great job. I would say more than a great job. A great job in many fronts. First, of course, we're coming from a very low bar with former President Lopez Obrador, so that's important to highlight, no?
Right.
But anyway, President Sheinbaum has been very bright in how she has handled the negotiations, which advisors she had chosen and listened to, and one thing is that Mexico doesn't have that Canada. Mexico has that Canada doesn't have, because you were making the comparison.
Right.
Is number one, approval rating. Approval rating of Claudia Sheinbaum is all-time high, and former PM Trudeau wasn't. So I think that's a major thing, because then you can do things and not pay a very big political cost, or if you pay it, you still have a lot of approval rate. And the second one is bargaining chips. I mean, it almost sounds like a joke, but it says, okay, if Trump bilateral agenda with Mexico, it's about not only trade but also immigration and security. Well, Mexico has organized crime, a lot of it, because former President Lopez Obrador allowed him to expand with the hogs not bullets policy. Then you have a lot of issues with immigration. What about Canada? They don't have bargaining chips. I mean, as I said, it sounds like a joke, but they don't have bargaining chips. Mexico does. So, and fortunately, two things. Mexico has had the upper hand handling immigration since 2009, when the National Guard was deployed and Mexico invested in shelters. So a lot of migrants actually are stopped before they reach the U.S. border. And second, in security, the great thing is that President Sheinbaum, her incentives are aligned. No, she never liked the hugs not bullets. I mean, maybe she didn't say it publicly, but she wanted to be a hardliner, and now she's able to do it at the federal level with Omar Garcia Harfuch as his public secretary. So I think she's doing a great job to retake the power of state, improve rule of law, and what's the best that something that can happen to a Mexican president that wants to go and improve rule of law? Having cooperation with the U.S. Share airspace, share intel, and that's what's happening right now. Even you saw Mexico handed 29 leaders of very important cartels, including somebody that was like nobody thought it would happen, Caro Quintero. I mean,
that was very
80s,
important for the United States. That was very important.
Indeed, a major. I mean, maybe he was not as important as he was in the past, but just handing him. We had many presidents, many parties, and nobody wanted to hand Caro Quintero to the U.S. government. So I think that was key. And the other one, the Mexican Senate has, unanimously, with a Morena supermajority, a very nationalist party, they approved unanimously the presence of U.S. troops on Mexican soil for training purposes. But I think all these things have been key for these negotiations.
So just, we've been talking a lot about the impact of these tariffs, the Chinese tariffs on the U.S. Consumer. But could you just walk us through what this potentially could mean for Mexico? Because the tariffs, everybody's kind of concerned about the tariffs, the Chinese tariffs. By the U.S. government, and then of course the Chinese, both country imposing tariffs. Um, but how does that affect Mexico? I mean, is there an area of opportunity for Mexico?
Yes, I mean there are three effects. Number one, the global effect that if you make international trade more expensive, you will have
Right,
a slowdown, a
right.
recession, and that's a bad part. No, and that's going to happen everywhere if they continue with this tit for tat. More so if it's for every
Hmm.
country. The second effect is the effect of the uncertainty whether these things are going to be actually implemented or not, because there are so many. It's
Hmm.
so much noise around. There's so much noise around these issues, whether
Hmm.
implemented or not. Just as we were chatting about the Mexican case, and that uncertainty creates slowdown. People postponing their decisions for consumption.
Hmm.
Companies postponing the decision of investment, and then you have the third part that
Hmm.
is a longer term effect that Mexico could really benefit from this. Remember what happened in 2001 when
Right.
Mexico entered the WTO? I think we chat about this in some other show, some other time. And it was a terrible thing for Mexico. We lost at status as one of the main trading partners of the US, and China became number one. Mexico bet on manufacturing and then started to go south. And this is going to change again. And
Right.
Mexico, it's a great place to be a manufacturing hub.
Hmm. So this is, I've been, as you know, I've been talking to a lot of analysts, trying to almost every hour. I mean, it's just incredible how fast this is all happening. So, do you have any sense how long this tariff war between China and the US, how long it's going to take? Do you think we're going to wake up next week and suddenly, Donald Trump starts, backing down on tariffs, or the Chinese government starts backing down on tariffs, and then we go into a process of negotiation that could take a couple of weeks? I mean, is that what's going to happen? Is this a negotiation strategy, or is this an end game for Donald Trump?
I mean, with almost every country except China, it seems that it's strategy to put countries on the negotiating table. With China, I'm not sure. I mean that's a key thing. I mean, I wish I know, but if
It's
you twist my arm, I think this will take longer. I mean, usually analysts that are deep into the relationship between China and the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
they have said that this relationship can either escalate or remain the same, but it will not
Mm-hmm.
improve. Now, this it has escalated so much that now it's like, of course, we start to wonder. Well, maybe they can, bounce back or do something,
Mm-hmm.
on in this issue. But honestly, I don't think so. I think this is part of the end game to really, move China out of the equation here, and
But
that's
it
sad
has an
for the world
enormous
as a whole.
impact on has an enormous impact on the U.S. stock markets, U.S. pensions, the inflation, and the eventuality that the United States walks into I guess we can say the R word, into a recession, Gabriel.
Yeah,
Is
no,
that
definitely, yeah.
possible?
Yeah, it's very possible. I mean, so some analysts have already called for that, or maybe a very deep slowdown. But anyway,
Hmm.
I mean, honestly, one important thing here is, you know, do you really the important thing is the speed. The speed of consumption is very fast. No, if I
Hmm.
give $1,000 to all the population, they can, and I tell them that debit card is gonna go to zero. The balance go to zero by the end of the day. I'm sure they're going to spend those $1,000. But if I tell companies, oh, you have to produce, this and that for the value of $1,000 in an hour to all the companies, they cannot do it. I mean, maybe you have to hire somebody, you have to plan for materials,
Hmm.
for inputs. So the speed of production is so slow vis-a-vis the speed of
Hmm.
consumption, and that's why there's inflation at some point. No, I mean, to make things very oversimplifying things, but so in this context, this is another example of that. do you really think factories are going to come to the US? I mean, I don't know if it's going to happen, but if it happens, it's going to take a while. And in the meantime, you face inflation and you face a recession.
Mhm.
So it is, I mean, I haven't seen a case where tariffs are good. So to start with, no? And
Yeah,
markets know it. And the
yeah.
problem is that the other two things that Trump promised, that it's lower taxes and deregulation, they are not coming anytime soon. You need congressional approval and a lot of things. So that's the part that it really it makes people very anxious, no, about this.
So what is the area of opportunity for Mexico? I mean, do you think this is going to be it's this concept of nearshoring will finally come to Mexico? I mean, do you think companies, even with this whole tariff war, are going to assume that the United States is going to have some type of, won't punish Mexico as hard as how it won't punish Mexico in the same way it's punished under other countries. I mean, do you think will be the idea of investments in Mexico as a I'm not going to say the word safe haven is maybe not the best concept, but a place where me, businesses will assume that the US will be kinder in that sense. I mean, what do you think? Do you think the business community is going to look at Mexico?
I think so. Yes. I mean, it's not. I mean, at the end, you have to question yourself why companies go to Mexico anyway.
Mhm.
You know, if you
Right.
think like from a normal perspective, like you're not in the auto industry, say, well, why go to Mexico? I mean, plants are automated; they don't need a lot of people anymore. You
Mhm.
go to Mexico for cheap labor, no? So why you go to Mexico? You have to deal with drug lords. You have to deal with Trump now. You have to deal with tariffs. Let's go directly to the US. But that's not the case. Companies continue to go to Mexico even though they're automated and they hire maybe 30 engineers instead of hiring 3,000 low skill workers.
Mhm.
So, and when I have asked, and I remember also chatting with you in the past about this, when I asked the managers of the plants
Mhm.
why they are made in Mexico, why they don't go to Mobile, Alabama, they always answer many things, but there are three things I always repeat.
Mhm.
No, number one, Mexico has a lot of engineers. They are very good. Maybe it's not MIT, but they're cheaper,
They're good.
1/10, 1/20, and they're willing to work in a factory because that's the other part. Number two, if factories in Mexico never stop. In the US, there's a problem. They stop. They don't produce anything for 2 weeks
Mhm.
until the problem is solved. In Mexico, somebody can, you know, fix anything with a chewing gum and then wait for the longer term solution, but never
Mhm.
stops. And that, from a cost standpoint, is very important. The cost of resuming production are
Mhm.
very high. And number three, and this is one I don't like to brag about it, but it's important also. If you have an environmental problem in the US, it takes 6 months, years to fix it, a lot of money, and in Mexico it takes 2 days. That's what they tell me. I'm by
Mhm.
just paraphrasing here, but if that's the case, I mean, even if you put a 25% minus the US content on cars in Mexico, I think that you will like to have more. You will like first the 15% cars that are not USMCA compliant will like to be USMCA
Mhm.
compliant, so that will bring auto parts and automakers to Mexico. And second, at the end, the other things will still be valid. No, so I still, yeah, nearshoring will continue. I mean, I think it already started. We saw it more in 23, 24. It was a little bit like in a pause because of the elections, but I think it's gonna come back and with more, full fledged force.
Well, but but I do have to say there has been an impact on the peso, and of course, if the United States goes into a recession, that's going to have an enormous impact on potential, on exports. So it's kind of like, maybe there is a Mexico will be kind of a shining spot in a in a, in the middle of this war that the United States is confronting with the Chinese government. Any expectations? Do you dare predict what's going to happen in the next 6 months, or is that too hard to predict?
I mean, one, yeah, it's too hard to predict because we don't know what's going to happen next week, and a lot of things,
Or the next hours, the next couple
other,
of hours, yeah?
exactly. And things have happened really, really fast. And very contrastingly, it's not like
Right.
gradual changes. So that's one. But second, I think that if we want to predict like calmer market conditions and
Hmm.
a better economy, it's like maybe it's going to take 1.5 years, 2 years. It's not 6 months,
Oh,
unfortunately.
really?
Yeah, because
That's
if we're going to experience a recession, we're starting it right now, and usually I mean, except for the COVID of the COVID recession that lasted less than a quarter. Usually they last more than one quarter.
mhm.
So they, at least just by just judging by past experience and the inability of U.S. government to do like a big fiscal stimulus package or to of the Fed to cut rates because it will be an stagflationary scenario, with high inflation
Which
and
it's
slow growth.
incredible. High inflation and low demand. Wow. I mean, that hasn't happened in a very, very long time, right?
Yeah, one of my books here on the bookshelf, has a lot of dust,
Right.
and I'm not blaming my wife or anything or me that I'm not cleaning, but it's just stagflation, and it has dust because I have not read it in a long time.
Right. It's a scenario that we haven't imagined in a decades, I believe.
Yeah,
Well,
definitely.
it's always great to talk to you. I always as I've commented throughout the years, you always are the more optimistic of the analysts that come on my show. So it seems that your optimism is somewhat tempered at this point. You're that you have a sense that we may get out of this. Mexico may benefit in the long run, but still, this is going to be a very difficult years for both countries. Well, for the world, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm it's cautiously optimistic. I mean,
Cautiously.
long term optimistic, short term not so optimistic because of what's happening right now. I think
Yeah.
that would be a better definition, probably.
Well, Gabriel Casillas, chief economist for Latin America at Barclays. He's joining us from New York. It's always great to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm going to thank you and all the best for you. And
Thank
let's
you.
hope everything goes better.
Oh my God. I hope so. We're going to go to commercial break. I'm Ana Maria Salazar. You're listening and watching to Living in Mexico.